What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are in the shop and we are going to be looking at fish finders, and I'm going to show you how to troubleshoot any fish finder problems you have on the water. All of the basic info that you're going to need for owning a boat, owning fish finders, and actually taking it out on the water, because most electrical problems and most fish finder problems are all very, very simple and easy to troubleshoot if you know what you're looking for, and you can solve them really fast, but you have to know what you're looking for. So we're going to dive right into it right now. So with fish finders, there's a couple common problems that you run into. The first problem is going to be power issues where the fish finder doesn't want to turn on. And there's also going to be the problem where the fish finder doesn't want to boot up. So that would be where you go to turn it on and it goes to that unlock screen, but that's as far as it'll go. And so one of the biggest things that I'll show you when it comes to fish finders is a lot of times your mapping chips, which you'll find in here, your little mapping chips, can disrupt your fish finder turning on. And so that could be like your Navionics chips, your Humminbird chips, even your SD cards that you have in there. If they're even a little bit wonky with there, it might work 100 times in a row, and then one time it'll start freezing and then it will not turn on. It'll go to that lock screen and then not past it. So all you have to do is take those SD cards out. You simply just push on them, pull them out, and then turn your unit on, and 9 times out of 10 that fixes the problem and your unit will turn right on. One thing I will say is I put a little dielectric grease on the tips of these to keep the inside of there lubed up and keep any water from corroding it, and just keep all your connections super healthy. And at the end, what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of break down some of the basic things that I like to carry when it comes to dealing with electrical problems on a boat, so that way you can solve a lot of these problems when you're out there on the water. Now, the next problem that you run into is connection issues, and that's going to lead me back to my dielectric grease. Now, all fish finders have a plug with multiple prongs on the back of it like this, and each of those prongs is something different. One of the prongs is power, one of the prongs is a transducer, and then another one could be a connection to all of the other units to make it link back and forth to be able to share waypoints and whatnot. And so like a NEMA cable or something like that. And so again, all I will do is make sure I put dielectric grease on those connection prongs before I plug it in, because that's also going to keep corrosion from happening on there. And if you've noticed one thing so far, it's that I keep saying corrosion. Yes, when it comes to fish finders, corrosion is one of those things that always happens, because it's just one of those things. Water's always getting on your connections, and so what you want to do is make sure you go through all of your different connectors that plug into your graph, that plug into your connection box down below that shares all your waypoints, all the way back to where your power comes on, where you go onto the battery. And I put dielectric grease or some sort of electrical grease on there, because corrosion doesn't just happen like that. Corrosion actually builds up over time, and so you might go for a year, you might go for 30 days, you might go for 10 years, and all of a sudden it stops working. And you're like, well, what happened? Nothing even changed. That corrosion was slowly building up to the point where finally it interrupted the connection and now it no longer works. So that, at the graph, that is the only things that I like to do to it. I keep dielectric grease on the prongs that go into the back of the graph, and then I keep dielectric grease on the SD cards and whatnot that go into there, and you can take the SD cards out to turn it on and off. Now, the other problem that I see all of the time, and this is one that has really stumped me in tournament practices and whatnot and really rattled my brain, is fuses. I like to keep a lot of fuses with me that match the fuses that I need to have in the boat. You can honestly just go get one of those big fuse multi-pack kits and keep that with you, because fuses are going to be what cause the most problems in the back right here. And so I have a Nitro Z20. You guys have seen it many times. And when I shut down, a lot of times water will get up on your back deck right here, right? Well, then it leaks through this crack right here and gets into my battery compartment. And if you look conveniently right there, there's a fuse right there, and then there's a bunch of other fuses right through there. And so I always, whether it's at the beginning of the year, whether it's periodically through the year, or whether it's on some of those days where it's rainy and overcast, I will take, again, dielectric grease and go through all of those fuses and put good grease on those fuses, because that grease will keep the water off of it. Because I've had it happen multiple times where you get to the ramp and now all of a sudden your power will not work. And it's because water leaked on those fuses long enough to where they finally corroded and now they won't turn on. And if you don't know what you're looking for, you can spend hours trying to troubleshoot the power problems, all kinds of stuff, when really most of the time, probably 9 times out of 10, the issue is going to be just a corroded fuse or a connection that got corroded, and that's why that dielectric grease comes in such handy. I'll also carry a wire brush, some Scotch-Brite, anything to be able to clean up those connection points, to be able to clean them up and get dielectric grease on there to keep that connection flowing. But all you have to do is open those up. Literally, you can do it one-handed. Pop that off, and you can see that fuse is right there. All you have to do is pull that fuse out, put the grease on it, and you're good to go. And generally, that'll solve it. I've seen a lot of guys put plastic across the top of here, like put it into these screws and then drape it across, so that way it keeps the water from running over or onto everything and runs it over. I just make sure all my connections are greased up, and I'm usually good. I will also go through and clean everything on the back, whether it's all of your battery connections. You can see I literally have grease on those. Clean it to make sure it's white down below. You can see how nice and white everything is. I love to keep my battery compartment clean, because if you can keep your battery compartment clean, your life is going to be a whole lot easier. The last problem that I see when it comes to power and graph issues is going to be where it connects to your battery. That's going to be your terminals. That's going to be these puppies right here, these guys. And one thing you want to do is make sure these nuts are always super tight to where your cables do not move. You can see those are tight, can't wiggle any of my connectors. That ensures that that is going to be a strong connection. It's going to make sure that power is flowing super awesome and super clean. And so going through with a wire brush or some Scotch-Brite, cleaning all of your terminals off where that connects to it, making sure they're properly greased and tightened at least once a year is going to save you so many headaches on the water. I can't even tell you how many headaches on the water that is going to save you. And that is just one thing that you always need to be sure of across all of your batteries. Because if you don't, that corrosion that can happen at the battery terminals will leach into your wires, and you'll have to go up into your wires and cut different sections. And so if you get back there and you find corrosion, which will be like white and teal, light blue at the tip of a wire, and you're like, man, I cleaned it, but it's not working, that corrosion can sometimes go up into that wire, and then you have to cut back and then put a new connection on and then bring it down. So you have to cut till basically you stop seeing corrosion, which is something that I don't recommend because it takes forever. It's a lot of troubleshooting. It can be really simple, but a lot of times you only have certain lengths of cables right here. And so if you only have that certain length and all of a sudden that corrosion goes up into here, then you kind of have a problem. And one thing that I will say finally is on your connectors, I love to use heat shrink tubing. And so you can see that, I don't know how well you can see right here, that light blue that goes up, you can see that's suction cup basically to it, because that heat shrink tubing on your cables, so you have your little circle cables that go onto your battery terminals, or the little circle connectors, you slide over and then put your nut on. Over top of that, what I'll do is I'll cut them, put heat shrink tubing, then put that connector, so then crimp it, put the heat shrink tubing back over it with some electric grease in there, and then you heat it and it shrinks to it and conforms to it, and that way it keeps all water off of the end of any of your battery terminals or any of your wire connectors, because your crimp can sometimes have exposed wire on it, and I just don't like any exposed wire that could potentially corrode at all. So if you have no exposed wires, you have everything greased properly, you check all your fuses, keep all your fuses greased, make sure your SD cards are greased, and you can pull those out if you're having problems starting your fish finder up. And again, if you start your fish finder up, you can put your SD cards back in and you're fine. It's not going to cause any problems. So again, some of the things that I like to keep are a tube of dielectric grease, no matter what brand. I like to keep Scotch-Brite, which is just basically like wool that your mom would have at the sink or something like that. It's just abrasive material that you can rub across connectors, across battery terminals to clean it off, and then a wire brush, and then a fuse box or a pack of miscellaneous fuses that match the ones that you have in your boat. I generally like to keep a few of them. And if you're going to change those fuses out, I like to make sure my power is off before I change them, because if you have your power on when you go to change them, as you're putting your fuse in, sometimes you can short it and pop it. So you need to be able to watch that. So I'll shut my power off, change those fuses, then you'll be good to go. And then a crescent wrench to be able to tighten connections. You always have to have a crescent wrench. But if you do those things and keep those things with you, your life is going to be so much easier out there on the water, and you'll be able to troubleshoot all the problems you have with your electronics and with any power problems you might have. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go sit down. I'm going to go through a short Bible study to give you guys a little bit of the good word of the Lord that I've been learning in my personal church, just to kind of help grow your faith and keep you stronger in the Lord. So if you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe subscribe button. Now let's dive into the good word of the Lord. So one thing as Christians that we always talk about is God's plan for every one of us, right? We're always sitting there talking about what God has planned for us, and what our plan and what God's plan is generally drastically differ. Sometimes we get it right, but I would be willing to bet everybody watching this video got your plan wrong right off the get-go. And what I want to be talking about, and what I want to talk about today, is specifically praying about it, and more specifically, letting it be and being in the moment, giving yourself that silence to actually ask God what He has planned for you, and then trying to recognize that sign, because we all get caught up in what we're doing in our everyday life, and sometimes we look at these paths in front of us and we get so hard-headed focused on one that we don't even look at the possibilities of what's around us. And especially for you young guys watching this, like, you're going to go down different career paths, you're going to have different job opportunities, different relationships, and not all of them are going to work out, and that's okay, because not all of them are meant to work out. All of the stuff that's put in front of you are meant to be tasks, are meant to be trials, are meant to be tests from the devil, from Satan himself, and honestly, just to build you into who you're supposed to be. And so it's not getting discouraged when these things in front of you don't work out. It's about, again, being aware of what's going on in your life, asking God what He has planned for you. One prayer that I ask you pray in your life if you're confused about where you are is one that I use all the time. I don't ask that He shows me what I need to do. I ask that He makes the door so obvious that I can't help but walk through it. Because, dude, I get so oblivious sometimes that I think I know what's best and I think I'm on the right path, when He's sitting there pulling at my shoulder going, no, this way, you're supposed to go this way, but you're like, I can make it this way, and nothing's going right. You're fighting the whole time, and it just seems like everything you do is wrong, and that's because you're not on the right path. And I'm not saying you're not going to have trials on the right path, but it's about recognizing God's voice in your life and understanding that there are going to be trials, but there's also wrong paths. And sometimes you're on the wrong path, and you have to be able to sit in that silence, ask the Lord what He has planned for you, and that He makes that door so obvious that you can't help but walk through it. And so thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button to follow on with the regular content I have coming out. But God bless every single one of you guys, and I can't wait to see you guys in the next video.